The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before the research vessel Stellar Scholar *. Inside the ship's main archaeology lab, Tom Roberts stared at his computer screen, hiding a small smile as his alien colleagues continued their loud discussion. "Look at these scans again," buzzed Dr. Blue, his antennae twitching with amusement. They used physical projectiles, actual chunks of metal thrown through space. The tall insectoid archaeologist's wings fluttered as he laughed, a sound like rustling leaves. Professor Green, a reptilian with gleaming scales, leaned closer to the holographic display. "And nuclear propulsion. How quaint. Whoever built this fleet must have been truly primitive." His forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air with what passed for amusement among his species. Tom kept quiet, his fingers moving steadily across his keyboard as he logged the data from their latest scans. The archaeological expedition had stumbled upon the ancient fleet 3 days ago. 50 massive warships, perfectly preserved in the empty void between star systems. "The preservation is remarkable, though," commented Dr. White, the team's technology specialist. Her crystalline body sparkled under the lab's lights as she moved closer to examine the readings. "These ships have been here for at least 10,000 years, yet their hulls show minimal degradation." Tom nodded, finally speaking up. "The engineering is interesting." He chose his words carefully, maintaining his professional tone. "The hull material seems to be a form of self-repairing metal alloy. Basic, but effective." The human archaeologist stood up and walked to the main viewport. Outside, the massive shapes of the ancient warships loomed in the darkness. Their dark gray hulls absorbed the light from nearby stars, making them look like shadows given form. Despite their age, their weapons still pointed outward in silent vigilance. "The design is quite aggressive," Dr. Blue noted, bringing up a 3-dimensional model of one of the ships. "Look at the weapon placement. Whoever built these was expecting to fight at close range. How barbaric." Tom studied the ship's layout, noting the carefully arranged point defense turrets and the massive rail gun batteries. Everything about the design spoke of careful planning and deadly purpose. These weren't the work of primitives. They were tools built for a specific job. "I've downloaded the initial survey reports," Professor Green announced. "We should present our findings to the Galactic Council next week. They'll be amused to see how far military technology has advanced since these relics were built." As his colleagues continued their discussion, Tom walked to another viewport, this one showing the fleet's flagship. It was twice the size of the others, its hull marked with symbols that seemed oddly familiar to him. He'd been studying ancient human civilizations for 20 years, and something about these ships kept nagging at his mind. "I'll stay late tonight," he told the others. "There are some details I want to check in the computer core we recovered." "Don't work too hard," Dr. White chimed, her crystalline form catching the light. "These old ships aren't going anywhere. They've waited 10,000 years. They can wait another day." After his colleagues left, Tom sat in the quiet lab, surrounded by stars and ancient warships. He pulled up the symbols from the flagship's hull and began cross-referencing them with Earth's historical databases. As matches began appearing on his screen, his eyes widened. The symbols weren't random decorations. They were warning signs written in an ancient human language, and they all carried the same message: "Prepared for your return." Tom leaned back in his chair, looking out at the fleet with new understanding. These ships hadn't been built by primitives. They'd been built by humans, his ancestors, and they'd been built to last. The only question was, what were they waiting for? As if in answer to his thoughts, his computer beeped with an incoming priority message. New reports from the Outer Rim colonies. Unknown hostile forces had appeared, destroying everything in their path. And strangest of all, modern energy weapons seemed useless against them. Tom looked back at the ancient fleet, with its primitive kinetic weapons and outdated nuclear drives. Perhaps, he thought, there was wisdom in old ways after all. The human archaeologist began typing quickly, copying all his findings to a secure database. His colleagues might be laughing at the ancient fleet now, but he had a feeling they wouldn't be laughing much longer. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was in chaos. Holographic displays showed the destruction of 3 outer rim colonies, their defense systems torn apart like paper. Tom Roberts sat quietly in the observer section, watching as alien diplomats argued among themselves. "Our best ships couldn't even scratch them," shouted the representative from the Crystal Worlds, her crystalline form flashing with angry colors. "The energy shields on our dreadnoughts might as well have been invisible." The Supreme Commander of the Allied fleet stepped forward, his metallic skin reflecting the emergency lights. "The enemy adapts to every weapon we use. By the 3rd shot, our plasma cannons are useless." Tom's attention shifted to his tablet, where he reviewed footage from the attacks. The enemy ships moved like insects, their black hulls seeming to absorb light itself. They reminded him of something he'd seen before, in the ancient records he'd been studying since discovering the fleet. "The colonists are calling them the Swarm," announced the council president, a tall being made of pure energy. "They attack without warning or mercy. They consume resources and move on. Already, millions are dead." As the council debated evacuation plans and defense strategies, Tom quietly opened his research files. The symbols he'd found on the ancient fleet matched perfectly with warnings carved into ruins on 17 different worlds, all dated back to the same period, roughly 10,000 years ago. His computer pinged with a new message. The automated systems he'd left scanning the ancient fleet have found something. Hidden deep in the computer core of the flagship was a tactical database, and it was filled with combat footage that looked eerily similar to what he was seeing now. "We've lost contact with the Henderson colony," a voice announced over the council chamber speakers. The room fell silent. Henderson was no outer rim world. It was only 3 systems from Earth. Tom stood up, his heart pounding. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying in the quiet chamber. "I believe I may have some relevant information." The council president turned to him, energy form flickering with interest. "Speak, Observer Roberts." Tom connected his tablet to the main display system. "The ancient fleet we discovered last week. I found evidence that it was built to fight this exact enemy." Laughter erupted from several council members. "Those primitive vessels," scoffed Dr. Blue, who was there representing the Science Academy. "They're relics. Museum's pieces. Look at this," Tom said firmly, playing the ancient combat footage alongside recent attack videos. The patterns were identical. The same swarm-like movements, the same adaptive defenses. The laughter died away as the council studied the footage. "How is this possible?" asked the Supreme Commander. "Because they've been here before," Tom explained. 10,000 years ago, they attacked our region of space, and someone fought them off." He paused, looking around the chamber. "My people. Humans." Silence fell over the council chamber. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Blue. "The fleet wasn't primitive," Tom continued. "It was purpose-built. Look at the weapons. Simple kinetic projectiles. Rail guns. Nuclear warheads. Weapons that can't be adapted to because they work on basic physics. You can't shield against a tungsten rod moving at relativistic speeds." The Supreme Commander stepped closer to the display, studying the ancient battle footage with new respect. "The design makes sense now. Everything about those ships was designed to counter the Swarm's advantages. And they're still out there," Tom added, "perfectly preserved, waiting to be used again." The council president's energy form pulsed with decision. "Observer Roberts, you will lead a team to study these vessels immediately, if there's any chance they can help us." The chamber's emergency lights suddenly flashed red. A new hologram appeared, showing a massive swarm of black ships emerging from hyperspace at the edge of a familiar system. "They're attacking Earth," Tom said, his voice tight. He looked at the council president. "Give me permission to reactivate the fleet. Now." As alerts blared and panic spread through the chamber, Tom thought about the ancient ships waiting in the void. His ancestors had known this day would come. They had prepared for it. Now it was time to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate humanity's long game. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss as Tom Roberts and his human team entered the ancient flagship. Their footsteps echoed through corridors that hadn't felt human presence in 10,000 years. Emergency lights flickered to life as they walked, responding to their movement. "Everything still works," whispered Mark Wilson, the team's engineer. He ran his hand along a wall panel, wiping away dust to reveal perfectly preserved metal underneath. These ships weren't just built to last. They were built to be ready at a moment's notice. Behind them, Dr. Lisa Cooper checked readings on her tablet. "Air systems are running at full capacity. The ship is pressurizing itself for us." She shook her head in amazement. "Our ancestors thought of everything." Tom led them toward the bridge, following the ship's helpful lighting system. Unlike modern vessels with their sleek curves and glowing energy conduits, this ship's interior was all angles and solid metal. Every surface seemed designed to withstand punishment. "Look at this," called out James Miller, their weapons specialist. He pointed to what appeared to be a simple metal wall. "The entire hull is layered. If the outer layer gets damaged, the inner layers shift to cover the gap. Self-repairing armor that doesn't need any power." They reached the bridge, a large chamber dominated by practical displays and solid control stations. No holographic interfaces or neural links here, just buttons, switches, and sturdy screens built to work even under heavy combat conditions. "Basic but effective," Tom said, approaching what appeared to be the captain's station. He pressed his hand to the control panel, and the entire bridge hummed to life. Screens lit up, showing system status reports that needed no translation. Their ancestors had planned for this moment, making sure their descendants would understand everything. "Captain, you need to see this," Lisa called from a secondary station. She had found what looked like a message system. "It's a recorded briefing. Should I play it?" Tom nodded, and a screen lit up showing a man in a plain military uniform. The recording was crystal clear, as if it had been made yesterday. "To our descendants," the man began, his voice firm and clear. "If you're watching this, the swarm has returned. We fought them before, in a war that nearly destroyed human civilization. We won, but barely. We knew they would come back. They always do." The team gathered around the screen as the message continued. "These ships represent humanity's best chance for survival. Their design may seem simple to you, but every detail was carefully chosen. The swarm adapts to energy weapons, shields, and complex technology. So we built ships that use the most basic principles of physics, principles that can't be adapted to." The man in the recording gestured to a series of tactical displays. Rail guns that fire simple metal projectiles at near-light speed, nuclear warheads that can't be stopped by energy shields, armor that repairs itself using basic mechanical principles. Everything about these ships was designed to counter the swarm's advantages. "There's more," Mark called from another station. "Detailed battle plans, strategic analyses, everything we need to know about fighting the swarm." Suddenly, the bridge's main screen lit up with a new message. "Authorize-DETCTED. Initiating AI-AOAK sequence." James stepped back in surprise. "But I thought these ships were built to be simple." A new voice filled the bridge, calm and clear. "Welcome, descendants. I am Guardian, the fleet's tactical eye. I was designed to sleep until needed, preserving power and preventing discovery. Now that you're here, I can share the fleet's full capabilities with you." Tom approached the main screen, where a simple text interface had appeared. "Tell us everything," he said. "The fleet is more than just ships," Guardian replied. "It is humanity's gift to its future. What appears primitive to your time is actually elegant simplicity. Every system was chosen not just to fight the swarm, but to be easily understood and maintained by future generations." As Guardian began explaining the fleet's systems, Tom's tablet beeped with an urgent message. The swarm had begun its attack on Earth's outer defenses. Modern warships were falling by the dozens, their advanced weapons useless against the adaptive enemy. "How long until the fleet is ready?" Tom asked. "All systems are operational," Gardian responded. "The fleet has been ready for 10,000 years. We've been waiting for you." Tom looked at his team, seeing determination in their eyes. It was time to show the galaxy that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Tom stood at the flagship's viewport, watching as lights flickered to life across the ancient fleet. One by one, each massive warship awakened from its 10,000-year slumber. The sight reminded him of streets lighting up at dusk, a wave of illumination spreading through the darkness of space. "This is impossible." Dr. Blue's voice crackled over the communication system. The alien archaeologist had insisted on staying on the research vessel to monitor the reactivation process. "These ships shouldn't even have power, let alone be fully operational." "That's because you assumed they were primitive," Tom replied, unable to keep a small note of pride from his voice. "The reactor design is elegant in its simplicity. No moving parts to break down, no complex systems to fail. Just pure, reliable power generation that could last for millennia." On the bridge behind him, his human crew worked with Gardian to bring more systems online. The AI had assigned each ship in the fleet a simple designation, Alpha through Zeta, and was coordinating their revival sequence. "Nuclear propulsion systems at full capacity," Mark reported from the engineering station. "These engines are incredible. They're like nothing I've ever seen. Fusion drives that use basic physics in ways our modern engineers never even considered." Lisa's voice came from the weapons control station. "Railgun systems charging. The magnetic accelerators are drawing power. It's amazing. Each cannon is basically just a massive coil gun, but the engineering is perfect. No waste, no unnecessary complexity." Through the viewport, Tom watched as one of the smaller ships tested its maneuvering thrusters. The vessel moved with surprising grace, spinning and adjusting its position with precise bursts of nuclear-powered thrust. "All ships report ready for crew transfer," Gardian announced. "I've transmitted basic operation protocols to the volunteer crews from Earth's Defense Force." The space around the fleet was now busy with shuttle traffic as military personnel arrived to crew the ancient vessels. Many of them were veterans who had specifically requested to join the mission, drawn by the chance to pilot these legendary ships. "Incoming transmission from the Galactic Council," James called out. The main screen lit up, showing the Council President's energy form. "Observer Roberts," the President began, "your alien colleagues continue to express doubts about this fleet's capabilities. They suggest waiting for reinforcements from the core worlds." Tom shook his head. "We don't have time. The swarm has already breached the outer defense line. Modern ships are falling faster than we can count. We need to move now." As if to emphasize his point, a new alert flashed across the tactical display. Another colony had gone dark, its advanced defensive systems proving useless against the swarm's adaptability. "The fleet is ready," Gardian reported. "All crews are aboard and in position. Weapon systems are charged. Nuclear drives are hot. We can launch on your command." Tom looked around the bridge at his human crew, then at the tactical display showing the approaching swarm. "All ships, prepare for combat jump. Gardian, begin the attack sequence our ancestors planned." The ancient engines hummed to life, a deep vibration that spoke of contained power. Across the fleet, massive rail guns rotated into firing positions. Nuclear missiles shifted in their launch tubes, their simple but devastating warheads armed and ready. "Your ancestors were very wise," Gardian commented as the fleet prepared to jump. "They knew that against an enemy that adapts to complexity, the solution had to be simple. Sometimes the most basic approach is the most effective." Tom smiled as he gave the order to jump. "Time to show the galaxy why you should never laugh at human engineering." The fleet vanished into jump space, leaving behind a research vessel full of stunned alien archaeologists. Dr. Blue watched them go, his antennae drooping slightly. "Perhaps," he muttered to himself, We should have spent less time laughing and more time understanding. As the ancient fleet moved to confront the swarm, Tom thought about the elegant simplicity of it all. His ancestors hadn't built these ships to impress anyone. They had built them to win. And soon, the galaxy would learn that lesson the hard way. The colony world of New Eden burned. Advanced defense platforms, once considered impenetrable, drifted in pieces through orbit. The swarm's black ships moved through the wreckage like sharks through bloody water, their adaptive shields shrugging off every energy weapon the defenders fired at them. This is New Eden control. Our shields are failing. The swarm has adapted to the transmission cut off in static. In the darkness of space, 50 points of light appeared as the ancient fleet emerged from jump space. On the flagship's bridge, Tom Roberts watched the tactical display with steady eyes. The enemy has already adapted to New Eden's defensive systems, Guardian reported. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons, plasma cannons, and particle beams. Good, Tom said firmly, because we didn't bring any of those. He pressed the fleet-wide communication button. All ships execute Battle Plan Alpha, just like we practiced. Simple and straightforward. The ancient fleet moved with surprising grace, spreading out in a formation that their ancestors had used 10,000 years ago. The swarm ships turned to face them, probably expecting another easy victory over primitive technology. They're scanning us, Lisa reported from her station. Trying to analyze our weapons. Tom allowed himself a small smile. Let them scan. There's nothing complex to analyze. Enemy ships approaching, Guardian announced. They appear to be confused by our lack of energy shields. Fire first salvo, Tom ordered. Across the ancient fleet, railgun batteries came to life. There was no fancy energy beam, no complex plasma formation, just simple metal rods, accelerated to near-light speed by magnetic fields. Basic physics, impossible to adapt to. The projectiles crossed space in an instant. The swarm's adaptive shields, calibrated for energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper. 20 swarm ships simply ceased to exist, torn apart by kinetic impacts that no shield could possibly stop. Direct hits, James called out. Their shields had no effect. The swarm ships scattered, clearly surprised by the effectiveness of such primitive weapons. They tried to regroup, to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Physics was physics. Second wave, preparing nuclear missiles, Lisa announced. Simple fission warheads, no fancy antimatter or energy matrices. The missiles launched, their nuclear drives pushing them to incredible speeds. The swarm ships tried to shoot them down with energy weapons, but the missiles' simple metal casings reflected or absorbed the attacks. When they detonated, the pure nuclear blasts ignored shields designed to stop energy weapons. More swarm ships approaching, Guardian reported. They appear to be attempting to analyze our drive signatures for targeting. Tom nodded to Mark at the engineering station. Show them why simple is better. The ancient fleet's nuclear drives flared to life, each ship moving in patterns that seemed random but were carefully planned. Without complex energy signatures to track, the swarm's targeting systems struggled to predict their movements. They can't lock onto us, Mark called out, excitement in his voice. The drives are too basic. There's nothing for their computers to analyze. On the tactical display, Tom watched as the battle unfolded exactly as his ancestors had planned. The swarm, for all their adaptive technology, couldn't handle weapons that worked on pure, simple physics. Rail guns continued to fire, each shot finding its mark. Nuclear missiles slipped through advanced defenses, their basic but devastating warheads doing what modern weapons couldn't. New Eden Control, this is the ancient fleet, Tom transmitted. Your skies are about to be cleared. The remaining swarm ships began to retreat, their adaptive technology useless against weapons that couldn't be adapted to. As they fled, the ancient fleet pursued with methodical precision, their primitive weapons continuing to prove devastatingly effective. Enemy forces retreating from New Eden space, Guardian confirmed. First battle assessment. 37 swarm ships destroyed, 0 losses from our fleet. Exactly as your ancestors predicted. Tom looked out at the stars, thinking about the elegance of his ancestors' plan. Send word to the Galactic Council, he ordered. Tell them we're ready to teach them how to fight the swarm. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Around New Eden, the ancient fleet moved into defensive positions, their simple but deadly weapons ready for any counterattack. The primitive fleet had just shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength wasn't complex technology. It was understanding when not to use it. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. On the massive central display, footage from the Battle of New Eden played on loop. Representatives from 100 worlds watched in stunned silence as the ancient fleet's primitive weapons tore through the previously unstoppable swarm. Tom Roberts stood at the speaker's podium, with Guardian's interface connected to the chamber systems. Behind him, holograms showed detailed scans of the ancient fleet's weapons and defensive systems. What you're seeing isn't just a victory, Tom explained. It's the fulfillment of a plan 10,000 years in the making. Our ancestors didn't just fight the swarm, they prepared for their return. Dr. Blue stepped forward, his antennae lowered in a gesture of respect. We owe humanity an apology. We dismissed your ancestors' work as primitive. We were wrong. The Supreme Commander of the Allied fleet raised his metallic hand. These weapons, they're so simple. Why didn't we think of this? Because, Guardian's voice echoed through the chamber, you fell into the same trap many civilizations do. You believed that more complex technology was always better. Tom nodded, bringing up new displays. We found records in the fleet's database. 10,000 years ago, humanity wasn't alone in fighting the swarm. There were other advanced civilizations. Most of them fell. The displays showed ancient battles, advanced ships firing ever more powerful energy weapons, only to be defeated when the swarm adapted. Then came images of human ships, using simple kinetic weapons and nuclear warheads, slowly pushing the swarm back. Our ancestors realized something important, Tom continued. The swarm's greatest strength, their ability to adapt to any technology, was also their weakness. They had become so dependent on adaptation that they couldn't handle weapons that worked on basic physical principles. The Council President's energy form pulsed with understanding, so humanity deliberately designed ships that used the simplest possible weapons. Yes, Guardian confirmed. Railguns that fire solid metal projectiles, nuclear weapons that use basic fission reactions, armor made of layered metal plates, engines that run on simple fusion. Nothing for the swarm to adapt to. Professor Green, who had once mocked the fleet's design, stepped forward. But the preservation systems, the AI, those are incredibly advanced. Tom smiled. That's the real genius of our ancestors. They used advanced technology only where it wouldn't interfere with the fleet's primary mission. Guardian was designed to sleep for millennia, preserving power and knowledge until needed. The preservation systems were built to last without maintenance. Everything else was kept as simple as possible. We've analyzed the battle data, the Supreme Commander said. The swarm tried 47 different shield configurations against your weapons. None of them worked. They simply couldn't defend against simple kinetic impacts and nuclear detonations. Your ancestors, Dr. Blue added, his voice filled with newfound respect, they didn't just build weapons. They built a legacy. They knew the swarm would return, and they made sure their descendants would be ready. The Council President moved to the center of the chamber. Humanity has proven its wisdom. We request your help in adapting our own defenses. Perhaps it's time for the galaxy to learn the value of simplicity. Tom looked at the tactical displays, showing the swarm regrouping at the edge of known space. Guardian, show them the rest of the plans. New holograms appeared, showing detailed designs for weapons and ships. Your ancestors, Guardian explained, left instructions for teaching other species how to fight the swarm. They knew that victory would require all civilizations working together. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives studied the designs. Simple, effective weapons that could be built quickly. Basic but powerful defenses that the swarm couldn't overcome. 10,000 years ago, Tom said quietly, humanity fought not just for itself, but for the future of all species. They left us this fleet not as a monument to their achievement, but as a tool to protect the galaxy. The Council President's energy form brightened. Then let us honor their wisdom by following their example. It's time to show the swarm that the galaxy has learned humanity's lesson. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Eden. Tom Roberts stood on the observation deck of the new Defense Academy, watching as ships from a dozen different species practiced formation flying. The vessels were unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, a perfect blend of ancient wisdom and modern engineering. The latest batch of cadets is doing well, Mark said, joining him at the window. It's amazing how quickly they've adapted to the new ships. Below them, in the massive construction yards, more vessels were taking shape. They looked similar to the ancient fleet, angular, sturdy, and built for war. But these weren't just copies. They were the next generation, built with the same philosophy that had saved humanity 10,000 years ago. Simple but effective, Tom noted, watching as a group of crystal beings practiced loading rail gun ammunition. Every species brings their own strengths to the design. The reptilian engineers had improved the self-repairing armor, making it even more resilient. The insectoid scientists had found ways to make the nuclear drives more efficient without adding complexity. Even the energy beings had contributed, developing better ways to shield the crews from radiation, while keeping the weapons simple and deadly. Incoming transmission from the front lines, Guardian announced through the Academy speakers. The main display lit up, showing the Supreme Commander's metallic face. Another victory, the commander reported, his voice proud. The swarm tried to adapt to our weapons by adding layers of armor, so we just used bigger projectiles. He chuckled. They still don't understand that you can't adapt to basic physics. Tom smiled as he watched the tactical replay. The combined fleet moved with precision, using strategies developed by his ancestors and refined by modern tactical computers. Rail guns fired in synchronized patterns. Nuclear missiles slipped through the enemy's defenses, simple, reliable, and devastatingly effective. Latest reports show the swarm retreating from 3 more sectors, Lisa added, walking in with a tablet. She had been promoted to head of weapons training. They're learning that their adaptation ability isn't the advantage it used to be. Professor Blue's latest research team made an interesting discovery, Mark mentioned. They found evidence that the swarm was originally created by an ancient civilization that believed adaptive technology was the key to survival. They became so dependent on adaptation that they forgot the value of simple solutions. Through the window, they watched as a new ship class took its first flight. It was a joint project, designed by humans, built by crystalline engineers, powered by energy being technology, and armed with weapons that would have made their ancestors proud. We're calling it the Legacy class, Tom explained as the ship demonstrated its capabilities. A reminder that sometimes the best path forward is remembering the lessons of the past. Dr. Blue himself arrived, his antennae twitching with excitement. The Council has approved the expansion of the Academy. We'll be training twice as many crews next year. He looked at the human team with genuine respect. Your ancestors would be proud to see species working together like this. They would be, Guardian agreed. The database shows they hoped for exactly this outcome, not just victory over the swarm, but unity among the galaxy's peoples. In the distance, a group of ships began combat drills. Their rail guns fired practice rounds at distant targets, the simple weapons proving that effectiveness didn't require complexity. Nuclear drives flared as ships performed evasive maneuvers, showing that grace could be achieved without fancy technology. The swarm is still out there, Tom reminded them. but they're learning a hard lesson. They're facing something their adaptive technology can't overcome, wisdom passed down through 10,000 years, teaching us that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As they watched the next generation of defenders train, Tom thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a discovery that had been laughed at, to humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not just weapons to fight the swarm, but a philosophy that would protect civilization for generations to come. Our ancestors knew this day would come, he said quietly. They didn't just prepare us to fight. They prepared us to teach, to unite, to show the galaxy that true advancement isn't about having the most complex technology. It's about having the wisdom to know when simple is better. Outside, the Legacy-class ship completed its trial run. Its simple but powerful weapons ready to defend all species. The ancient fleet had started as a subject of mockery, but it had become something far greater. A bridge between past and future, a symbol of unity, and a reminder that humanity's greatest strength was not its technology, but its ability to learn from history and plan for tomorrow.